Is abstraction good? When I think about abstraction, I see a huge spectrum. When abstraction is used well, it is the best thing ever. The project is easy to work in, performance impact is minimal, and everything's well. But when abstraction is implemented poorly, it is the worst. The project is messy, everything is confusing, performance is suffering, and you're dreading another day you will have to work on the project. Somehow it feels like you only get one or the other and nothing in between. So how can we ensure the abstraction we implement is actually a good one? One of the ways I try to implement good abstractions in my project is to defer the choice until I'm forced to. So the second guideline is forced abstraction. Begin development with minimal abstraction and let the project's evolution introduce it where needed. This will make the abstraction higher quality and relevant. Let's start with a simple example. You're starting a new project and you want to create a character for your game. You know you will have user inputs and that the character will have different abilities, so you decide to create two components to handle input and abilities respectively. Makes sense so far. You start adding functionality related to movement for different inputs, and then you go to abilities and start implementing them. After some time you start getting into some difficulties. Your character has different movement styles, like on foot movement and flying, and both use similar buttons but have completely different functionality. Now you have a bunch of checks and a messy code. The components are also heavily relying on functions from each other, making their representation inconsistent. You decide something is not working, so you start the project from scratch. This time you don't assume the abstraction right away and just start writing code in a more procedural way. After some time you realize that it would be easier and more convenient to separate the code based on the character's movement style. You also create different input contexts for each. Now you don't have to do a bunch of checks and branching paths, and can just enable one component at a time. Maybe have a functioning character that does it. Switching to a mindset of less or no abstractions until you're forced into it will in general bring the quality of abstractions in your project up, increase your enjoyment, and also help with the performance. You will also have less abstractions, specifically less of the bad ones. Now, as any guideline or rule, this is not an absolute or universal. There are many exceptions that we can think of. For example, if you are working on a project that has already defined standards or policies that you have to follow. If you have already done something similar and are intimately familiar with it. For example, you already did a specific abstraction multiple times and know if and how well it will work. Or if you are in the project that is already very big and maybe nearing the end, you don't want to start changing, breaking it down, or deviating from the structure. That's it, don't assume the abstraction, let it come to you. Thanks for checking out my second video on this topic, and if you have an opinion on it, feel free to leave a comment.